This is Business Talk, your business, your success. Sponsored by Take Action Business Coaching. The opinions expressed are those of the participants and may not be the views of the staff, advertisers, and owners of the station. Advice given is not intended to replace that of your business advisor. Now, let's get down to talking about your business, your success. This is Business Talk.
Oh, good afternoon, Peg.
Good afternoon. Great to be here.
Here we go again. We're going to talk about your business.
Yes. And you know, we always like to start with good news.
We do.
So what we thought we would do is start out with a little good news that's going on in with our firm.
Our firm, yes, and personally. We're actually we're doing some traveling here coming up. We're headed to Fiji and Australia.
Yes. So, in fact, we are leaving Golly in just a little bit.
Right.
So we'll be gone next week, and back, though. We'll be coming back.
Now, Fiji's kind of on the way to Australia. I've looked at the map, but not recently. And we're just going to go there and, relax for a couple of days and then go to the conference, which is in Hamilton, at Hamilton Island. And it's right by the Great Barrier Reef.
Well, and the reason we're going to Australia is Action Coach is a franchise that Pete and I, as business coaches, purchased 13 years ago.
Yeah, and 14.
And it was originated in Australia.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And Brad Sugars, who started, and he's been a guest on our show.
Yep.
Yes, the founder is from Australia. So it's our 25th anniversary.
And he has a home there, and we're not staying at his house.
No, we're not staying at his house, but we are going to be at a beautiful home anyway.
Oh, yeah.
Which is good news. So what that means to you is when we come back, we're going to come and do a show on lessons learned from our conference in Australia.
A lot of new ideas. And one of the speakers, Michael Lozier, who wrote Law of Attraction, will be there.
He won't be that one. He's going to be the one in February.
Oh, okay. Charleston, something like that.
He'll be in Charleston.
Oh, okay. All right. February.
South Carolina.
Okay.
Right,
Beautiful.
right, in February. So we have some great speakers. We'll be coming back and sharing with you. So that's good news.
We'll definitely give you those.
That is really good news.
My daughter Emily had ankle surgery last week, and it went well.
Oh, I didn't even know that.
Well, yeah. She had one reconstructed about a year and a half ago, and now they're doing the other one to just get it done.
Oh, I didn't realize that. I didn't realize it was done. You haven't even shared with
for those
me.
soccer players out there, if you go back in a game after really spraining your ankle and just play anyway, and you do that over and over again, after a while, you'll wreck your ankles. And that's what she did.
Yeah, and you'll have to get surgery.
Right.
Okay. That's
but
good
her
to know.
other ankle that the operator is working great, so this should be great as well.
Thank goodness for surgery and medicine.
Yes.
Oh, my. So today we have a great topic, Pete. Describe so tell me a little bit, like you picked this topic, and again, what we're going to do is Alan, our producer, is going to go ahead and record this show, as he does. Thank you, Alan.
He does.
And we're going to put it on our website. And so if you go to takeactionbusinesscoaching.com, our website, and you hit radio shows, or you'll see the 98.9.
Up in the upper right corner?
Yes. You'll see by category. So what are we going to call this?
Well, this person that was interviewed by someone from the Penn Business School, Wharton School, and his name is Fred Kaufman. He wrote a book called The Meaning Revolution, and emphasis on the word meaning. And the subtitle is The Power of Transcendent Leadership, easy for me to say. And we have a lot of employees that we know that are not engaged fully in their jobs. And one of the things that he mentions here, and we've mentioned this before on the air, a statistic for the United States, for the world, is approximately of the billion-plus people that are in the workforce, about 10% of them are actively engaged in their job.
And, we talk about, and there's another show that in the past we called the 7 Steps to Engagement, which you can listen to.
Right.
And it's because right now the U.S. is on an average of
30%. Yeah,
30%.
We are actually much better, believe it or not, than the rest of the world. But what that means is 70% of the people in our workforce in this country are either disengaged or hate their jobs, one or the other.
And so what we're talking about, so one of the things in the topics of this book, which we really enjoyed, and the reason we're talking about this is because right now we're at an all-time high of people being stolen from other employees, being
poaching,
poaching.
Whatever you want to call
exactly.
It, yeah. And employees are being
poached.
Recruited.
Like recruited. And so what we're going to talk about, this show is all about leadership. I guess what would you call it?
Yeah,
leadership and engagement.
How to engage people and how to
through using leadership.
Yeah, and the title of this article was "Should Leadership Feel More Like Love?"
There you go.
Which sounds kind of funny, but
that's good. I like that as the title. Should leadership feel more like love? And so it's interesting. So Pete and I are business coaches. We get to talk to a lot of leaders from big companies, small companies, and sometimes we run into, and we're going to talk about generations too, Pete.
Oh, definitely.
The different
That's
generations,
definitely in here.
right?
Yeah.
And it's interesting because depending on the generation, sometimes we'll get, and this would maybe be for a more mature generation or maybe a baby boomer, where they're like, just get the job done, all this soft stuff. And we hear that and say, this is crap. And we're going to talk about today's show of why it isn't. Why isn't it? And what is the impact? And what should you do? What are the strategies you should do?
We talked on a previous show about how the global economy over the last 50 years and more has generally and steadily increased everybody's living standards, right? That's happened across the entire planet.
That's true.
Right? Drinking water's better. People have lights in their homes where years ago they didn't. Even in this country, when I was a kid, we didn't have air conditioning. And now everybody has air conditioning almost, right?
Well, and if you think about
you know what I'm saying?
And most people didn't have phones like they have now.
Oh, no way. We had a party line. When I was a kid, we had a party line.
Oh, yeah, you had a phone. Now we're showing our age, but you were lucky to have a phone
Our
in your room.
esteemed producer, even though he looks 41, he had a party line too.
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, so what I'm hearing from you, Pete, is that the economy is getting better and better.
Well, yeah, not only is our standard of living is going up, and sometimes we've read that the average American's pay is in the mid-50s, and it's been there for several years, quite a few years, in that same range. However, technological advances, things like that, have given us a higher standard of living, even if our average income has not gone up.
Well,
right?
and
our
what
phones
that means,
can do more things. It's a computer in your hand.
Right. And so what that means is what to the workforce?
Well, one of the things, and you remember when you were a kid and your grandfather or sometimes your dad would go, I walk 4 miles to school and all this kind of stuff. Well, each generation tends to have it better and better and better.
And it's a reality. And that's the thing. This is it's not that the millennials is this new generation that, the reality of it is every generation has had it better. I mean, every generation has had it better as we go on, as we move on.
Right.
So when you look back and you say, well, we used to not have to do other things. Well, that's true.
Yeah. And we laugh because we hear from our clients a few times a week, oh, millennial this and millennial that. Well, you know what? It's always changing. It was changing when we were 20-something.
And that was the same language was used then. Like, oh, you're not working hard enough. It was the same language.
Yeah, they call you the pot-smoking college kid or whatever, that kind of stuff. But it was the same idea. And one of the things that they say in this article here is that economists say that once you get to a basic level, meeting your basic needs, you got food, you got water, you got clothing, you got a car, you got a roof over your head, you got air conditioning, it's going to take more and more and more to satisfy you. And it crosses a line where material goods are less important and other things are more important. And that's what this is about. It's about the other things.
And I think that's why it's called, what did we call this? It's leadership.
Why should leadership be more like love? Should leadership feel more like love?
Well, and that's what we're getting into. And some people challenge us with this saying, oh, you're getting too soft. But it's that point right there is a lot of their needs are being met.
Yes.
So how do you differentiate yourself?
And we're reading a book now called The Road Less Stupid by Keith Cunningham.
Yes.
Excellent book. I was reading some of that again over the weekend. He talks about having different snack foods in the kitchen and about having a ping pong table or a pool table. That's not what's going to keep you great people or even get great people.
It could help.
You might want to do that because it's fun, but that's not the key. Material stuff is not the answer. It's not the signing bonus or the raise that's over the top.
What Pete and I like to say, and I was telling that to somebody the other day, is I said, pay your people fairly. In other words, take that off the table.
Right, and even a little better than the average or the mean. If you're in Chicago or in Columbus, do some research, find out where it is, and go a little better.
And what was the last
take
time?
It off the table.
Take it off the table.
That's exactly it.
And so now why?
Right.
Now why you?
Right.
Because guess what? Your business is all about marketing for people. And what is your marketing plan?
That is a really good
And how are you doing
idea.
it? And a lot of times it's interesting because we say, we bring in people to interview with us, and we absolutely need to do that. But equally, we need to sell them on why us.
Right. Why
work for us? And are we treating them like a customer? Like we need to help them.
Well, you've got to look out at your employees and say, I've got to always assume that somebody's trying to steal them. And why should they stay here?
Absolutely. And so and we're talking about leadership being the differentiator.
Right. And it all comes back to relationships, which we talk about on the show a lot. is that based on the strength of the relationship that you create with your employee and you foster relationships with that employee and other employees, the strength of those relationships will keep that employee in place.
Well,
that's the glue.
It is. And so when we get back, we're going to talk about leadership, Pete. And I liked how some of the strategies on what it is and what it takes to truly be a leader. And what we're talking about is buy-in, right?
Yeah.
We're going to talk about how to get buy-in and engagement.
Enthusiasm, energy, excitement.
And that is what it's all about. And then this, of course, creates your culture.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
And so
that's what's going to set you apart. You mentioned it. It's differentiating yourself culturally from other people in similar businesses.
Could your business use some help? Call 614-306-7922 to schedule your coaching session. 614-306-7922. Now, here's more business talk.
So we're talking today about an author. His name is Fred Kaufman, and he was interviewed by an interview at Penn, and talked about the meaning revolution, meaning the power of transcendent leadership, and how do we, as leaders within our own organizations, or if you're in a larger company, in your department or in your area of the business, how do you create such great relationships that people will follow you? You have to create those relationships. It's up to you as the leader to engage others.
Well, I really like that you say that. It is all about getting the buy-in. And how does he talk about getting buy-in? And I like how he speaks to it it's about your values. It's about getting people to buy in to follow your mission.
Well, it's kind of interesting. One of the things he mentions here is that as an individual, and we all think back to your career, when you first get out of school, it's somewhat of security. Boy, I got to come in and do well at my first job so I can hang on to it, and it's about survival, right? At some point, you get to where you're pretty confident professionally and you're doing a great job, and you know whether you're there or you're working somewhere else, you're going to do great anyway, and you want more, right?
Right.
And he said it also happens with entire generations. In other words, the baby boomers we did have it better than our parents did, at least in my case. You know, you had more material stuff going on. And now it's happening again with the millennials where, you know, we think, oh, they got it made and they don't want to work hard. Well, not necessarily. It's just that the material stuff's taken care of instantly. It's already done. Now it's what's going to keep these folks.
I like that you just said that, because it's so true. And it's interesting because as parents, if you're listening, and you always want more for your kids than you had. So it is more demanding, and the living is going up and up. So what are we going to do to keep these people?
Yeah, and this author says, and this is an interesting way to put it, is the flip side of millennials saying, oh, well, they've got it so good, is flip it around and say, well, they've got it that good. They have a platform from which they can aspire to do even more good. In other words, what's the purpose? Who am I helping with this business or my department? What am I creating that's lasting? What's my legacy, even as a young person in a professional role? What's my legacy in this company? And how are you going to help me create it?
Right. And and I like that, because you know what? We're already at, like, if you imagine we're on a scale of 1 to 10. Uh-huh. Well, we've already gotten up to scale 4. We've got our food. We've got that all taken care of.
Free food in the refrigerator, man.
So we're focusing now on other things to make us at another level above. So I don't want to hear us talk about the millennials have it all and they're spoiled. I don't like that languaging, because you know what? It's what are we doing to manage the resource we have?
Well, and it's not taking accountability for things, right? And it's not taking responsibility for things. If you go that route, it's making excuses.
Well, exactly.
If you say that, if somebody quits, you go, well, they were spoiled brats anyway.
Well, and you know what? It's a war for talent, Pete, right?
Oh,
it's totally
no doubt.
a war. So now...
And you guys that are listening, business owners, you know it.
Well, so right now we're getting to the end of a particular curve, which is the curve of money and benefits and salary and stock, like all of that.
You can't throw more of those things at people.
No, it's differentiating yourself based on what everybody offers, you know, what's different. And it's not going to be the money anymore. Right. It really isn't.
When they walk away from that interview and say, you know, what a cool place to work, or those folks are really into their jobs. That's what's going to keep them.
And I think it's what you say is a moral good. I think it's looking at, okay, there's material good and then there's moral. And so tell me a little bit about what moral good would be.
Well, one of the things that they talk about here is people are scared because there's a difference between what I call material and moral good. So they talked about that. Moral good is you can create a moral good by creating a sense of community, a team effort, right?
Right.
Community within the company, or even if the company's doing some things within the community, they're growing. A lot of our clients, you can see the visible effects of their efforts out in the community. A purpose that's meaningful, something that they can relate to.
Well, let me go back to the community before you go on.
Yeah.
We, as we're looking at engagement, and Pete and I are really good at walking into companies and saying, okay, how engaged are your team members and what are all the 7 steps to make sure that's done?
Right.
Well, one of the things that is really, I want to say, a priority is that when you bring in your team members and that community you're talking about, when that person makes a friend, then that person makes 2 friends.
Right.
And then if that person makes 3 friends.
Every time they add a person, the probability of that person staying goes way up.
Exactly. So sense of community is important because they don't want to leave their community.
Right.
It becomes so strong.
And you as a leader have to figure out, well, how do I'm not doing it directly, but how do I foster an environment in which the other team members want to build relationships with this new person?
Exactly.
And help them do it.
Right. They're friends.
Right.
They're friends, and that's what's the priority is, okay, I don't want to leave my friends. I don't want to leave my community. So anyway, community is really, so we're going back to moral. Yeah. So what we were saying is material versus moral, a compass kind of thing.
Right. So sense of community, purpose that's meaningful, something that people can relate to, so it's clear. Ethical principles, that will hold you as well.
Well, and we're going to go back again.
In a good way and a bad way,
That's true.
Right. It can drive people out, too, if they see things going on that they don't want to see.
Well, I wanted to go back to the purpose.
Sure.
So you were talking about the purpose. So when we are talking to companies, and again, this is Peg and Pete with Business Talk, and we're talking about the title of our topic is, Should Leadership
Feel More Like Love?
Yes. And so one of the things that is interesting about purpose is when we walk in, I sort of think of purpose and vision, kind of mission kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of times you may have created this, you may have it written down, it might be on a wall. What we see often is it's not visited, it's not brought up, and it's not living. It's not communicated a lot.
Right. It's really about what you do, not what you have on your wall.
Right.
Right. It's about how you interact with your teammates, your customers, the community at large. It's all those things.
Right.
And that's where people understand whether you mean it or not.
Right. So we want that purpose. That sense of community. Okay, so we've got community, we've got purpose.
Meaningful purpose.
And then we've
ethical
got
principles.
ethical principles.
And the other one, and I've always liked this one, and something that will make people proud to participate in.
That's proud enough that I'm going to put it on my social media
Pride
page.
is important. Think about a great football team, right?
Pride is important.
It's important.
Because they're going to stand by you.
You
and that's
bust
what
your butt
you.
to defend your record or to not anybody through your line or whatever your job is on a football team, right?
Well, I think now that you're thinking about it, I want to ask our listeners, what would they be proud of? What would they be proud of you listening, like of your company? Have you given them something to be proud of? And would they stand by it? And if you haven't, then what is it you think?
Well, you could think about those 4 things. So if you're going to create a moral good in your company, is there a sense of community? Do you have a purpose that's meaningful? How are your ethical principles? Will they hold up under scrutiny? Mm-hmm. And are people proud? And if they are, what are they proud of?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I really like that. I do like that.
And then I like this sentence. He says, the difference is that you can give material goods without involving yourself and your employees.
So you have to give up some things is what this is.
You have to give of yourself is what I think they're saying.
And this is why we're saying is leadership. Leadership has to be love because it's getting to that point where there needs to be that connection. It's not just about getting a paycheck.
If you're more of a manager than a leader, you're going to be worried about deadlines and timelines and pulling the trigger on certain things, but not necessarily inspiring people to follow you.
Well, and that's
really what we want, right?
Right.
That's what's going to keep people with you for years and years.
So we are talking more about inspiration, right? And so we're talking about, as a leader, your job to engage is to inspire. So one of the things he talks about is how do you inspire trust?
Well, and one of the big things, and this is a huge word in here, is trust. What's the level of trust that you inspire in me? If I'm one of your subordinates, that's a great question to ask of yourself, is how much trust am I inspiring in my employees, in me?
Right.
How much do they trust me?
Right. I think that's fair. I think that's a great question. And what are you doing? And I want to go back to that sense of community. And again, this is Peg and Pete with Business Talk, talking about how to engage, how to create a trust that shows love. And we're talking about inspiration and buy-in and in getting that trust and in creating those connections and those relationships.
Yeah, so that's one. So trust is one. Number two is, what's the level of excitement that you can inspire in others?
So
trust
much
is one thing.
Now,
excitement's another.
And at the beginning of the show, we talked about engagement in the U.S. is 30%.
30%, which makes us among the best in the world.
Which means we're losing some money with production with our labor.
70% are not engaged, and fully engaged.
Outside of cost of goods, majority of the time, labor is going to be your highest expense,
Huge.
depending on your industry.
Depending on what you do, yeah.
So depending on what you do. So what investment? And so Pete and I go into companies and help with this. Like we go in and work with the leaders. We work with the team to make sure your investment in your people is working so that you are inspiring, because I like that word excitement. They need to get excited about serving your customer, serving your team, figuring out how to, to problem solve, getting them excited, and that's your job.
These would be great questions for you, business owner, or you, the management team, business owner plus the management team, is what is our level of trust amongst our employees, and how can we do better there? How can we raise that level? Mm-hmm. How much excitement are we building around our major projects, our themes for the year or the quarter even? We rolled it out, but are people talking about it? Are there things happening in the business that are visible that are creating excitement about it? That'd be a good question to answer.
I like those questions, Pete. Those are good.
And how clear is that vision that you have of where you're headed, a little bit longer term? Mm-hmm. How clear is it to the folks out in the field?
I like that.
And how do we know that they're really heading that way?
That is good.
He mentions that Beatles song, "Can't Buy Me Love." Remember that? You buy me diamond rings, but you can't buy love. So yeah, the diamond ring's it's not what we need.
And
right?
what's happening sometimes right now is you're really busy. And you guys, we hear you. We're busy. Everybody is busy right now. And we say that because the economy is thriving.
Right.
Businesses is growing. It's a great time.
Yeah, and you need your employees to care.
Right. And sometimes we're not taking the time to realize the value of slowing down and asking a question, or spending time one-on-one with an individual, or taking them to lunch, or building that trust. We talked about trust, right? Mm-hmm. We talked about buy-in. We talked about getting excitement.
Some of this is pretty simple stuff.
And it takes
time. You can build trust by spending time with people.
Mm-hmm. And doing what you say you're going to do.
Trustworthy, right?
Right.
And do what you say you're going to do. But if you spend time with someone, going to lunch with them, or whatever it happens to be, you'll build a relationship.
Well, and first of all, you have to, if you're listening, you have to say, okay, this is valuable. This is a priority. This is important. You mean
to build these relationships with our employees, because whether you know about it or not, people are trying to recruit your employees.
Well,
they're doing it.
You know what, Pete? It's exactly
a couple of our companies. It's way over the top, overt. They know.
Oh, it's become battle. Yeah. It's a battle, and he even says it in there right now. It's a battle.
Yeah.
And what are you going to do to differentiate yourself?
A talent war.
When we get back, we need to give you more strategies and tips.
To learn more about today's topic, call 614-306-7922. Now, back to more business talk.
Well, we've been talking about how to make leadership feel more like love, right? That's a cool topic. It's like a 60s theme.
Well, it's a Beatles kind of.
Yeah. Come on, I don't do diamond ring, man.
It's really what's required in leadership right now, and this is why we're doing a show on this, is we need to differentiate. And what we were talking about before the two breaks is what we are talking about is how to differentiate yourself to your team. Because right now, everybody's pretty much got a good paycheck. Everybody else has benefits. You have all of that.
Right.
So if you're going to go to a Google versus a Facebook,
why? And you can't just keep throwing more and more money or things at it.
Right.
That's not the right thing to do. And one of the comments that this author says is that people are trying to attract the new generation with the same things that they attracted the past generation with, and it isn't working as well.
Well, we're failing because we're not looking to change. So right now, and this is why us, Pete and I, in our coaching firm, we are busy and we're doing well because I think people realize that when you bring in an outside resource like a coach who's working one-on-one with your leaders, what you're going to do is help make that change possible because it is different and there are new things that need to be done and you have to do it differently.
Right.
And so what we said, some of the tips we said before is making sure you build a community.
One of the things he mentions in here is that leadership is the ultimate competitive advantage. So think about that.
Right.
What do you think about that?
Well, absolutely.
Let's say I'm the CEO of the company and our managers, department heads, supervisors are all great leaders. What's that going to mean for our company?
Well, and not just to inspire and engage them to do the great job, but keeping them because most people leave because of culture and their manager.
Or weak relationships or bad relationships.
Yes.
Or no relationships.
And so how many leaders do you have in your organization and are they the right person?
Well, the other thing that happens with the opposite of this, if you have great leadership, is that when you do have it, your customers see it too. We see it within our businesses that are doing great. I can think of a couple right now that they're really good at building strong cultures, and they're growing like weeds.
Well, and how often are you nurturing, I'm going to use that word because of nurturing and love, nurturing the relationship with all your leaders? Are they getting on the same page? How often are they meeting? You know, Pete and I have a client that we brought on, and this company is growing quite fast. A lot of our companies are, and they're going crazy, right? You know, your manager, because you're just trying to keep up with everything.
Right.
And I just went in and said, okay, so as a group, you leaders, how often do you meet? And the answer was never. I said, okay, so we don't have a rhythm of meeting so that we're all on the same page. We're all in a different
and sharing
spot.
information,
Yeah.
right? There's business purposes for it too.
So
right?
making sure that you have the opportunity as leaders to do that, to create a community, create relationships, and then with your team. And that's how you get engagement because that's what we're talking about.
So those of you that are business owners or department managers, company managers, think about your critical relationships for you. If you've got half a dozen direct reports or 8 or whatever, what are the strengths of those relationships? Rank them. And then for your managers, the people that have departments and things like that, they should do the same and think about what they have. How have they built those relationships and where they're weak? What can we do to shore them up?
Well, and I like this, that most companies don't get that that you need the best people giving their best effort. And they don't get that because most leaders are not able to inspire a commitment.
Right. The other thing that he mentions in here that I really like, Peg, is that they talk about leadership for yourself, developing as a leader. It requires you to work on yourself. You have to do it. I like
that, Pete. It's inner development.
Yes. Nobody can do that for you.
No, it's inner development. And it's not just reading a book. I mean, reading a book in the education part, absolutely important. But what are you going to do with it?
But if you read the book and go test it in your work environment or test it at home, you're going to learn and you're going to progress. If you don't test it, you've got to use the new material and try some things out, which is uncomfortable sometimes.
It's exactly it.
You've got to try it.
And inner development of your leaders is really critically important. Are we giving them the resources to help? And are they taking the resources? And are they really taking that to a new level?
Yep.
And so, Pete, this is Peg and Pete with Business Talk. If you want to hear this show in its entirety, you can go to takeactionbusinesscoaching.com.
Right.
Click on 98.9.
98.9 icon is the upper right corner.
And you'll hear shows by topic.
Yeah, you can pick a topic.
And this one's called Leadership.
Leadership, more like love.
More like love.
Right. How do we do that?
So, Pete, what was another strategy that this author recommends?
Well, the other thing, and this is kind of interesting because we are big about measuring things.
Right.
Not too many things, but critical things. So if you think of your business as a set of systems, there's multiple systems in a large business, and we want to make sure that each of those systems is healthy. So we'd like to have 1 or 2 key performance indicators to tell us whether or not that system is healthy, right?
Correct.
We don't want to have too many. We also want to have some that are more global, and by doing that to create team cooperation. If the football team knows that really ultimately today, guys, we need to win this game.
Right.
That's a global performance indicator, win or loss, right?
Because the offense
whether you're
and
defense,
the defense,
offense, special teams, you all want to win the darn game.
Right.
So we all know that one. But you got to think about it on your business standpoint is make sure we don't give incentives to individual, and I'm picking on salespeople, but don't give it incentives so far to any individuals that will conflict with global performance indicators.
And I want to give you an example of what happens. And he speaks to it as well in the book of Creating Silos. So we worked for a company, a manufacturer, and they had productions, and they had different lines of production. And what they were doing is they created incentives for each line to reach a goal.
Yes.
So, okay,
I remember this one.
We're making pens, right? So, hey, there's ink that needs to be made. Okay, so you guys have to produce this much ink.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, then it goes down the line, and then the ink has to get, I'm making this up, has to go into the can, let's say. Well, each person was so siloed in their KPIs, in their goal, that it didn't matter how I was delivering that product to the next person, because one had to rely on the next. Because as soon as I reached my goal and I gave it to you, I got paid. But then when I was delivering the product next, it was really sloppy. It wasn't done well. It wasn't due to...
Did I dump it in a big pile on the floor,
or
I give it to you the way you needed it?
Exactly. Exactly. And so one of the things you have to consider is these global KPIs that makes everybody operate and work together.
Yeah, you ran track, right?
Right.
You were fast.
I was.
And you did relays. I did relays too.
I did relays.
Long time ago. But we want to run this relay race. If I don't hand the baton off properly, we're going to lose.
Right.
Right.
And that's exactly what we see.
And I got to run my individual race, but you got to communicate and pass things off to your partner properly.
Pete, that's exactly that. You've got it down, because you know what? It's not just about your individual split time. It's about the overall goal. And working towards those KPIs that are global will help you get more instead of the individual incentives. And we see that a lot in companies where we're missing that. It doesn't mean
you don't do individual incentives.
It's an and.
Yeah, it's an and.
It's an and.
Right. And just look for potential areas of conflict. Right.
That's a good one. That's a good point. Like if I am judged on speed and it messes up my next step, is that a real KPI that should be done because it's messing up somebody else's?
And if I close a deal and overpromise something that our company can't possibly deliver on, that's a problem.
Oh, I know. I know, exactly. But we do see this. So, I mean, it's really looking at what is your overall, looking at your company, and what is your overall goal? Are you, as a team, all going towards that?
Yeah, so we're asking you to examine a lot of things, that homework from the last segment, but take a look at your key performance indicators and your goals and figure out whether there are any that are in conflict, or is everybody focused on the right goals?
In fact,
and are we measuring them well?
So Pete and I were working with a new company, and it was interesting last week when we met with the leaders. We first said, okay, how does everybody know? As we're sitting at this table, does everybody know what each person's indicators are so that you can help them achieve it?
Oh, right. And they didn't, did they?
No, they didn't.
The four of them.
No, they didn't know it, nor did they really have them written down.
Okay.
And then, so that was our homework was, okay, you all are going to come back.
Yep.
You're going to tell us what your key performance indicators are.
Yep.
So if you're in production, it's 1. If you're in finance, it's 1. If you're in sales, it's 1. But then we're going to have a couple overall goals that we all have to feed into. So when we have all of these KPIs going well, then the overall goal is met.
Right.
So like what you just said about the conflict, we see that sometimes where one person's goal can be achieved, they get their bonus, everybody's happy on that team, and it creates resentment. And then they become in conflict too, because if this person gets their goal, it doesn't help towards the overall goal.
Right.
So as a homework, Pete, I like what you said. As a homework, make sure that you are looking at those again.
Right.
Communicating.
And the good thing about that is that once you do it, you can wait a few months before you have to make an adjustment. It's just something, a couple times a year, you got to take a gravity check on these things and make sure they're helping your team and your team development and your team cooperation, and not holding you back.
Well, I like what you said. Yeah, very good.
The other thing, and before we go on to our last segment, they give a definition of leadership, and it's eliciting internal commitment in order to pursue the mission. How do I get internal commitment? In other words, how do I inspire another person, excite another person to the point where they are working as hard as they can with the resources they have to get the mission done?
That's true.
It's not about whipping them to go faster and faster and make the boss rich. It's about how do I get them excited about what we're doing here.
Well, and I like that definition of leadership is what are you doing? And it takes a person's inner development in order to understand how to do that. That's a talent.
And the next thing here, it says nothing to do with formal authority, which I think is great. So everybody in the organization is a leader. And sometimes the informal leader can have more influence than the formal leaders can.
Could your business use some help? Call 614-306-7922 to schedule your coaching session. 614-306-7922. Now, here's more business talk.
So we've been talking today about how leadership could be more like love, and one of the things this author says is that their definition of leadership is eliciting internal commitment in order to pursue a mission, which I think is really good. How do I inspire the people around me, other departments, other divisions, our subcontractors, our contractors, other people that work with us to get the job done in a great way?
I like that.
And I'm not doing it for them, and I'm not pushing them to do it. I'm inspiring them to do it. And that's my real job.
Well, and Pete, here's a couple questions for you. Is how do you take a manager or leader and get them to that level? So if you're a leader and you have people that report to you, how do you get it done? How do you teach them this?
How do you take a manager to a leader?
Right.
Yeah, that's a great question. One, and it comes back to the criteria that we use for coaching clients is, one, they've got to be willing to learn. They've got to be willing to change when change becomes apparent that's needed. And they have to follow through. They have to do what they say they're going to do. And if you do that and you're interested in improving, the sky's the limit.
And I guess I liked what you just said is that's what we coach. Yeah. And a lot of times if you're listening to Pete and I and you're saying, I like what I'm hearing, but I don't have time. Honestly, that's why you bring in a coach.
Oh, absolutely.
It's about leverage. It's about helping you. You might be completely talented and the best person to do this. And can you do it as much as you need to?
Well, and if you don't have time, well, maybe and you're working 60 hours a week, well, maybe you could do a better job at 45 hours a week if you knew how.
Well, exactly. And cutting and saying no to some things.
It's not about working harder.
Right.
That's not what it's about.
It's about working smarter and really understanding where to put your energy and time and focus.
Yeah. Leadership is a verb.
That is true.
It's not a noun.
Right.
You're a leader, you're a verb. Right, you're doing things, and you're eliciting followership from other people.
Well,
right?
And if we look back, I know we're still diving into this, but if we look back and talk about some of the takeaways from the beginning.
Yeah, let's do it.
So as we're looking at this, some of the things we've talked about is engagement. We started off with saying that 30% of the U.S. has engaged in a team, right?
Right.
Some of the strategies that we really want to concentrate on.
And that in order to not use it as an excuse, there are generational reasons why this kind of feeling comes up. And I'm not picking on millennials. I have 3 of them and children, but we hear it a lot from our business owner. Oh, millennial this and millennial that. Well, you know what? When we were kids, our parents called us something like that.
They didn't use a generation
kind of
term.
They used something else.
You kids these days.
Yeah, you kids, we had it much worse than you did. Well, yes, because every generation, particularly in the United States, our standard of living continues to climb rapidly. Mm-hmm. And we can't inspire people by giving them a parking spot or an extra 5% in their pay. That's not going to do it.
And it's not that they're not ungrateful. There is a bit, though. I have to tell you, there is when you hire someone new and it's the first job, you might see some ungratefulness because they don't yet know they're of what is good and what isn't.
Well, and some of that comes down to, and especially you folks, business owners that have started your own business, you know how scary it is the first few years or whatever that period of time was. It was years in most cases. It's 10 years or more. And the fear and the sometimes devastation. Things happen and you go, oh my gosh, we lost that big client. What are we going to do? How am I going to make payroll? You've gone through all that stuff. So, yeah, sometimes people don't understand what you went through.
Exactly. And then I liked some of the strategies of making sure you build a community.
Yes.
Making sure that there's inner development. Making sure that ethically you're coming through.
Yeah, and we need to differentiate ourselves. Think back to marketing. We need to differentiate our company and our company's culture from our competitors, our talent competitors, not our product or service competitors, but people who might take our talent. How do we set ourselves apart from other places that those employees could work? And you need to be actively thinking about that as a business owner.
And so, Pete, a lot of people now are hearing about culture, right? And that's a real big buzzword, and it has been. There's all kinds of books out there, all culture this, culture that. So, speak to culture as it relates to this.
Well, I like this one area where he talks about, and the author here, about creating a sense of community. You as a leader, as a business owner, that is one of your jobs. How do I fit within this community? What is my corporate community like? And then what is our purpose? Is it something that's meaningful that everybody can relate to? And do we operate with ethical principles? And are they clear? Mm-hmm. And really, it's a great way to make decisions if it's clear from the business owner and the leaders of the company. Here's how we do business with folks. Here's how we treat people. Here's how we pay our bills, those kind of things. It helps people make their business decisions all day long. And then are people proud to create the things that you're creating? Can they take pride in this stuff? And how can they do it? Do you help them do it?
Right. I like all of that. The taking pride. That's another strategy and how you get, that was some of your homework.
The other question I'd ask the business owners out there is think about, forget the material goods for a minute. How can you involve yourselves more in your own employees' development? How can you involve yourself with each of your employees? I
like what you said, because right now you're busy and you're meeting with customers and you're selling and you're doing all of this. And critically important is time with your team.
Right.
And it was funny because I forget the client we were working with, Pete, but he was like, I remember now. His company has gone it went from 10 employees to 20 to 30 to 40, right? And he's like, I used to be able, this is over like the last 5 years. Yeah. I used to be able to have conversations now. And I go, you know what the difference is now Sam, Sam's always my fictitious character.
Yep.
Sam, you have to plan. Like you have to create a spreadsheet. Like you have to plan now. It's not easy anymore. It's systemized.
And it could be simple stuff. We have some clients that they come up with some really innovative ways to do these things. Is once a week I'm taking an employee to lunch.
Right. We have one
once
client
a week
who does
I'm taking a manager to lunch.
Or breakfast.
Right. Something like that.
Or drinks.
And it doesn't sound like a lot, but if you do it all year, it's 50 employees.
It's a compound effect. It's a little bit. It's a little bit, takes it far away, but you do need to systemize it.
Right.
And some of this has to be systemized and if it's not natural for you and it's your first time, it might make sense to talk to us. Now, Pete, if somebody wants to talk to us, what's the best way?
You could give us a call at 614-306-7922, or you could email at PeteMcDowell@actioncoach.com.
And this is Pete and Peg. I always say Peg and Pete. I just wanted to.
It is Peg and Pete.
It's Peg and Pete.
That's our, it's on our T-shirts. It's Peg and Pete, and that's how it goes.
Yes.
That's the way it should be, right?
Yes, and we're talking about different strategies that our firm uses with different clients. Oh, and one other thing that is really, and one thing that's really bonding, and we have a lot of clients doing it, is a 90-day plan.
Right.
Making sure that everybody knows everybody's goals and it's communicated. That helps with the mission and the buy-in in the community. So we've created a community here with our clients and their team.
We do these 90-day planning sessions as a group with a
subset
of our own clients. So we spend an entire day with a group of clients. Generally, it's 40 to 50 people. Some businesses bring their management teams, and they rotate people through. Some people bring different people each time. But what we do is take people through a structured process whereby at the end of the day, you have a plan that you and your team created for how you're going to operate in the next 3 months.
Right. And you can bring your team too. Like we have one client, like your leadership, like the whole leadership team is coming because we know as we go as leaders, so does the company go.
Right.
And so that development we're talking about and that inner development, it takes place at sessions like this. So
I always use the example of years ago, we worked with a father-son in a business.
Mm-hmm. I remember this, yes. Years ago.
We asked them, when was the last time the two of you, and they'd been in business together for at least 10 or 15 years, when was the last time you got away from your business and talked about just the business? They said, never.
Never. We've never sat and planned for a day.
We've never sat and done this for a whole day.
And you know what we do is we have you do it every quarter.
Right, exactly.
And it was funny, Pete, we were talking with Michelle, one of her clients, and she goes, my client is up 20%. And
Isn't that funny?
It's just great. They started that's what happens when we coach you.
Right.
And it's because we know what we're doing. We've been doing this for 13 years. This isn't an accident.
The other thing is there are people in that room that have similar challenges. They've all got employees. They've all got customers. They've all got cash flow things. They've got prices going up on raw materials or supplies. They've got everything. You're not alone. That's the other thing. You're not alone. You're going to learn from somebody else who's run into the exact same problem.
Well, and you're taking the time, like you said, you're taking the time to plan.
And getting out of your business to plan is a very good way to do it because you won't be distracted.
Well, exactly. And that's what it's all about. And getting back to leadership is love kind of thing, is showing your love, is we want to get commitments. one way we get commitments is by showing them our plan, our mission, getting their buy-in.
Yes.
And that 90-day plan is really important. It's really about taking the time to slow down, to speed up, don't you think?
Now, what's the date? Is it the 14th of September?
Yeah, so it's September 14th.
It is September 14th.
You come in at 8 o'clock.
8 o'clock.
8
right.
o'clock. And you know what? Let's go ahead and give a couple tickets away.
Yeah, so if anybody's interested in
yes.
coming and attending, bring an employee of yours. Give us a call at 614-306-7922 or an email to PeteMcDowell@actioncoach.com, and we'll get you in there.
And it's a $300 value, right?
At least.
mean, it is. But, yeah, so bring your team and absolutely come and do that. Now, if you want to listen to our radio show in its entirety, it's takeactionbusinesscoaching.com.
Right.
And then when you go on the website, you go to 98.9, click that on,
Yep.
and you'll see all the different radio shows.
The other thing I'll mention is that at these 90-day planning sessions, we always have a learning portion. And last time we had Jim Pontius come from
Right.
Hutchison Media.
Oh, that was
and
wonderful.
He educated everybody on some marketing principles, which was great.
Oh, my
But
gosh.
we always
learned.
have about 45 minutes to an hour of a focused learning topic within the day of planning.
Oh, I like that. So,
Makes
oh
sense.
my gosh, that's great. So, Pete, to wrap this up, tell us a little bit about the book again. Who is the author?
Oh,
I mean,
sure.
we were speaking to some of the strategies. We were using, obviously, some of our examples because this spoke to us because of what we do. But what's the name of
you
it?
can look this up. It's Fred Kaufman with a K. It's Kofman, and the book is called The Meaning Revolution, and the subtitle is The Power of Transcendent Leadership. And really what his point is that leaders inspire others, leaders excite other people, leaders move other people to action. They don't make them do it, but they help them. They create the conditions through which employees want to go do the things that need to be done. And when you can do that, you're a leader, not a manager.
Well, and you're not yelling and screaming at them? Is that what I'm hearing?
Yeah, only when necessary. Yeah.
I'll yell at you, and I'll yell at you louder until you get done what I
Right.
want you to get done.
Work faster, make the boss rich. Right?
Yeah, so maybe
we're not doing
avo-
that kind of stuff.
We avoid that strategy now. So if you're yelling and screaming, let's just take it from Peg and Pete. Stop.
This has been Business Talk, your business, your success. Sponsored by Take Action Business Coaching. The opinions expressed were those of the participants and may not be the views of the staff, advertisers, and owners of the station. Advice given was not intended to replace that of your business advisor. For more information about the topics discussed today, call 614-306-7922. 614-306-7922. Tune in next week at this time for more Business Talk, your business, your success.